You are listening to the Evolution Exchange, a melting pot of ideas and inspiration shared by some of the most successful tech leaders in Asia. I'm Sid, and I help tech companies hire the best salespeople in the market, and today I'm your host. We have the pleasure of being joined by three fantastic speakers who are veterans in building and growing international businesses in Asia. First, we have Sushant Sharma, the founder of Scalient Ventures, a company who helps startups and scale-ups with their go-to-market strategies and sales advisory. Prior to this, he was the Vice President of Sales at Conviva, QVest Media, and Acedo.tv. Next, we have Andrew Baisley, the Head of Southeast Asia and Channels for APJ at Asana. Prior to this, he has worked in Facebook and Tech in Asia in a multitude of commercial leadership roles. And last but not least, we have Anurag Srivastava, a General Manager for APAC at Pindrop. And prior to this, he has advised and scaled multiple early-stage startups, including Saltmine and Vimo, and was in senior leadership roles at a few enterprise tech companies. So it's really great to have you guys here with us today. And just a quick disclaimer before we get into the thick of things. All views and thoughts expressed by our speakers and myself are that of the individual and not that of their companies. So with that out of the way, let's get started. Let's start with some introductions. So Sushant, can you tell us a little bit more about yourself?
Sure. I started my career as a software engineer, like tens and millions of Indians. After that, I did management consulting for a while. Got bored of building PowerPoints and eventually jumped into enterprise sales. For the last 10 years, I've been in enterprise sales based out of Asia, initially in Hong Kong and most recently in Singapore. Mostly I've worked with like Western companies, so European, US headquartered companies, enterprise tech companies that have wanted to come to Asia Pac and grow their business in Asia Pac. So that's my.
Fantastic. Anurag?
Yeah, thanks, Sid. I've been in technology for about 20 plus years. I think you made a very, very nice introduction. Been working in startups for the last 5+ years now for Series A. Now I'm in a Series D company. Prior to that, worked with many technology companies like Microsoft and Kofax, Software AG. In my spare time, I'm a venture partner with a venture capital company from India called Cornerstone. So the thesis for that is B2B enterprise SaaS. So that keeps me pretty busy and active in the startup community. Just trying to give back as much as I can to people with best practices. In fact, we were all in SaaSter recently talking about, the best practices for B2B enterprise SaaS.
Fantastic. Andrew?
Yeah, thank you. We should come back to SaaSter and talk about that, what that means for this part of the world and companies coming here. But it's great to be here. Thank you. I am not Singaporean, if you might have guessed, despite my love for chicken rice. I've been here for just over 7 years, but my wife and I are originally from New York. In New York, I started my career in ad tech and media tech. Went through a bunch of mergers and acquisitions, 2 IPOs, before I eventually landed at Facebook, where I spent about 5.5 years, which is what brought me out to this part of the world. So I helped Facebook launch some parts of its business in Australia, and then eventually landing here in Singapore and working across the entire APAC region. After that, I went to Tech in Asia, where I was running the commercial side of that media publication. So these are like events and branded content and advertising, that sort of thing, which was a really incredible experience. They're an incredible publication that really truly cares about the startup ecosystem here. So that was very unique. And I've spent about the last almost 2 years at Asana looking after our channel business across the region, which is our primary go-to-market motion for basically all of Asia, except for Japan, Southeast Asia, and Australia. And I also look after the business here in Southeast Asia.
Fantastic. Yeah. So thank you guys for your introductions. Today we're going to discuss something really interesting. We're going to uncover, some of the challenges that you guys have faced when you were growing your businesses in Asia. I think each of you have faced similar challenges, but also probably some unique ones. But I think just to start it off, right? What would be, I think it's hard for a lot of people that haven't been in this role to understand exactly what the big challenges are. They may assume to know certain things, but I think, one of the big things is actually communicating with the senior leadership that are not based in Singapore or APAC, how business is actually done. So, Sushant, can you tell us a bit more about, I guess, how you've navigated this and how you've managed the stakeholders in that sense?
Yeah, sure. So, just to set the context, of the companies that I have worked with, so they have been typically at zero when they started in APAC. So when I joined those companies, they were pretty much at 0 to 1 kind of stage. One of them was, 1 to 10 stage as well. And these companies are generally 50 to 300 employees, right? They're not huge companies like Facebook or some of the big tech companies. So and many of the executive leadership, they have not even traveled to Asia. I mean, forget about working in Asia. They have not even traveled to Asia back in their lives, right? So, I mean, that's the kind of context, just to paint the picture. I think in terms of challenges, obviously the biggest challenge is the fragmentation in Asia Pac. I mean, there is 20 odd countries, and there are different dimensions to Asia Pac, right? So, I mean, you have low ARPU markets, you have very high ARPU markets, you have mid ARPU markets. Then within low and mid ARPU markets, you have large accounts as well, large potential enterprise customers that you can go after. So how do you build your go-to-market strategy, right? Where do you focus on? So on and so forth, right? So, ARPU is one, then again, the business maturity is very different. Language is obviously, which is the most obvious kind of differentiation and challenge here. Those were some of the key kind of challenges across Asia Pac when you do sales here.
Okay. Do you have anything to build on that?
Yeah, I mean, it's about expectations as well, right? It depends. I was explaining this before we started. I've had this unique opportunity of scaling businesses from headquartered companies from India, from headquartered companies in Singapore, and now bringing in a US company into APAC. And a lot of people have different opinions. India obviously is in the center of Southeast Asia, so it's easier reach. They know a lot about Southeast Asia. Yeah. For APAC, typically they have expanded out of APAC once. For the US, they've expanded out of US once, and typically they go to UK, right? So they've had some experience in expansion from the US, and that becomes kind of part of their playbook, right? But US in many ways, in UK in many ways is kind of similar in terms of homogeneous buying behavior, right? So people really underestimate the fragmentation and the buying behavior in Asia Pac. So I think even before they come here, one of the things we spoke about was, starting the education process a little earlier in terms of, not every country in APAC is going to sell the same way. So if a deal takes, X amount of time and Y amount of dollars that you can get from a particular deal, it's, how would that translate for every region within Asia Pac and Japan, right? Some places the selling cycle could be double. And at the same time, the ASP that you get from that deal is going to be half. So the expectation setting, I feel, is extremely important.
That comparison to go to market in EMEA is like a thorn in my side because it is so different. Anyone who's operated here knows that. But yeah, you're right. American companies will often expand into EMEA, usually via the UK, and then they think they can just kind of do the same playbook here. Or even worse, they'll go into Australia and they'll say we're in APAC. We're in APAC. It's like, no, you're really not. You're in the PAC part. But I think that's a really common challenge. I think it's also, I see a lot of companies that really need a lot of help on prioritization. And what I mean by that is it's really easy from outside of the region to look at the region and think, should we go to India because it's such a giant market, it's the next China, the economy's booming, or should we go to Indonesia because there's 250 million people, or Australia because it's easy and we know how to sell. And companies just really don't know how to make those decisions and need a lot of guidance in that prioritization exercise. Because it's not as simple as just there's a lot of people, let's go there.
Yeah. So I guess how have you tackled that challenge? How have you communicated that to the leadership?
I think for me, it's a balance between the realities of the resources that you have available to you and the remit that's given to you. So if you're working with a company based out of the West that wants to expand to APAC and that's all they give you, that's kind of, to me, a red flag. They should have, you need to have some kind of guardrails around that to bring focus to the business. So I think you have to look for maybe alignment in what go-to-market strategies or ideal customer profiles, and then start tweaking on that to make it work and find a place to focus and start, say, like build the plane while you're flying it here in APAC. But you don't need to like plan it all out ahead of time because it's just too complex.
Okay. Have you guys faced any similar challenges in that area in terms of getting their buy-in to understand exactly how different it is?
Yeah, absolutely. I think with European customers it was slightly better because European headquarters slightly better because EMEA is also fragmented, maybe not as fragmented as APAC, although they would disagree and they would say that no, it's just as fragmented, but slightly better than the American headquartered companies, right? So I think some of the buy-in that has, some of the conversation that is helping the buy-in is essentially, data usually helps. So if you show them like hard data points about ARPUs, CPMs, like in AdTech word, we use CPM as one of the metric. If we show some hard data points, that kind of subscription ARPUs and already you tell them Netflix doesn't cost the same in India as it costs in US, right? So I think those kind of data points help in telling them what is the end consumer situation, and then our customers who are the enterprises selling to those end consumers, what would be their situation, right? So I think those kind of data points has helped in educating the HQs a bit.
Oh yeah, I think we spoke about the data angle, especially when it comes to communicating the realities of the situation on the ground here.
Yeah.
So I guess what has been the most crucial kind of metrics that have helped you communicate the value of APAC to the leadership?
So I'm a very governed by leading indicators kind of a guy. So and if you're in go-to-market, I definitely believe in activities, right? And activities focused on certain North Star metrics. So it's important that there is alignment, number one, on what are the OKRs for the region. This is after all the commitment to the region has been sorted out, right? And then we say, okay, these are the kind of North Stars everyone's going to be focused on and trying to achieve. And then it's really, are we doing the right activities on a daily basis, weekly basis to get us there, right? Because it cannot be, hey, the outcome wasn't achieved. Because there are things that are going to go wrong, but I think, so one is that the measurement of leading indicators. Second is communication. So one of the things I mentioned to you was, I have this format that I just do a monthly newsletter to the ELT in every company that I've been in. Just keeps them informed on how's the pipe progressing, what are the kind of key lows and key highs for the month. And I do a lot of selfies, so it gets the fun thing out there as well. Most of them are either eating or drinking, so it also gives a wrong impression. People think that's all I do. But it's a good way to break the ice with senior leadership who understand what's happening on the ground.
Okay. So when it comes to setting those expectations, setting those OKRs, right? I guess what's the process behind it? How do you decide what's best for this company at this stage and for this region?
I can go for that first. So I think for us, and I think it goes back to what is the commitment of the company, right? So in Pindrop, for example, they've been thinking about APAC for a while because EDBI is one of our investors as well, right? And then the pandemic happened and obviously it all went to hell. But the final decision was made because we've done a Series D a couple of years ago, and the idea is as we start progressing and maturing further, we have to prove to investors we're a global company, right? So APAC just becomes so strategic to the overall growth of the company that a $1 here, and I could actually say this, a $1 here is more valuable for the company than a dollar right now in the US, because it just increases the valuation of the company and shows the applicability of the technology to different geographies. The other thing is the vertical. We're seeing so much traction here with the government, which is not actually our ICP in the US. So, if we get that going, it just shows that we've got, cross-referenceability as well. So I think it's important to understand the commitment from the company and how are they perceiving APAC to fit in the larger picture and the growth. That in turn defines the OKRs that you can push for specifically in this region.
Okay.
I think definitely align with that. I've had the benefit of most of the companies that I've worked with have a product-led growth sort of foundation, and we have the privilege of using that as a landing point on understanding in the data like where there is traction and where we can set up more strategic bets. And one of the things you mentioned was that your ICP might be totally different. We see the same thing. We might have one ICP in North America, and that's pretty similar in EMEA. It could be totally different in different markets across APAC. Hopefully you can see that in the PLG motion. You can see where you have like higher churn than usual or lower churn and maybe like stickier growth. And you can start setting those as the areas you want to probe into.
I'll just add on to that. So I think one of the biggest contentious topic is actually setting the quota, right? I mean, that's at the end of the day, that's what matters, right? So there's also kind of a push and pull between HQ and they want to give you a bigger quota, you want to take a smaller quota and so on. So I think one exercise which has really helped is like doing very rigorous bottom-up analysis and not just kind of pulling numbers out of your ass, right? So I think that exercise has helped a lot, and also looking at some historical data as well. If you're a new company, then you don't have that kind of historical data, but if you have, you use it. If you don't have the data, you reach out to your peers, who have been in the market, Anurag, people like Andrew, and you get some benchmarks that you can use, right? So win rates, sales cycles, so on and so forth, right? And then you map it against the sales capacity that you have, and that gives you a bit of comfort as to what would be the realistic quota. Of course, you're given much higher than the number that you put forward, right? But I think that data-driven kind of bottom-up rigorous analysis, I think that has helped a lot.
I think the quota too, it doesn't always have to be revenue. It could be things like new logos or like a list of logos. Yeah, right. No, it's not. I would say it's not like that at Asana, but I have seen companies that have some success with that.
Yeah, but I completely agree. I think the OKRs have to be defined well, aligned with the global growth. The other big thing that came to my mind, right, is the aspects, and this is Andrew's sweet spot actually, is around partnerships. In the US, especially with any company who's sub 100 million in revenues, they've typically done a direct motion, unless it's obviously pure PLG. But even pure PLG would be kind of direct, right? So they don't understand the relevance and the importance of partnerships in APAC, and that's one of the education that we actually have to do when you start talking to companies who are not. And this goes back to even the company that I worked in, which was initially India headquartered. Then we finally moved our headquarters to the US, but initially it was from India, and even there it was all direct motion. So when we moved to Southeast Asia and globally, getting the partnership mindset was so important. And even in Pindrop, we spent like a few months before joining, I just kept talking about the importance of partnerships. Now, some ICPs, Andrew, to your point, will be direct, like maybe government, for example, right? But there are so many geographies and so many other verticals where we have to rely on partners. And I'm sure you can add a lot of color to that.
Yeah, I mean, this comes back to like my previous point on you're going to have natural guardrails in your business and investments that you can and can't make. And not every company, in fact, most companies can't open an office in every major city around the world and hire people that speak that language and have those relationships. So partners are key to that. I mean, you really only have the choice of relying on PLG if you have it, or making a huge investment in building a local presence in these countries, or working with partners. It's like it's a good happy medium. But it's like the reason that it exists and the reason that that's so successful speaks to the underlying truth of like what is different about APAC, and it's that you need local operators, you need local relationships, you need to bill in local currency, and you need to see your customers face to face, and partners are a good way to do that.
Actually, this executive buy-in and alignment is a very important topic. So I want to add a few more things. And because Ram mentioned that he sends a monthly newsletter, photos, and so on. So one thing which has really worked for us in the past is that bring in all the CXOs to Asia, like do a roadshow, at least on a quarterly basis, and bring a different CXO every time. So don't bring the same CRO like all the time, right? Bring a CRO once, then next quarter bring a CPO, CTO, CFO, so on and so forth. So everybody gets a flavor of what APAC is. Take them to different markets. In 1 week you can easily cover Southeast Asia and India, right, or Japan, and Greater China, for example, right? So you can do like those 1 or 2 weeks kind of road shows. I think that really helps. The other thing which has also helped is building allies with other regions, right? So if you have VP counterpart, VP EMEA or VP LATAM, I think they would be more sympathetic to your situation, right? Fragmentation and so on and so forth. So if you build like those kind of allies outside of the HQ, and when you go into like SKOs or planning sessions, the quota setting sessions, and so on and so forth, then those allies keep coming very handy, because then you can support each other in your kind of arguments when you put forward.
Absolutely, I completely. That's absolutely an important point. Because I just had an exec leave last night, so I think we need to keep rotating the execs that come for sure. The other big thing that just came to my mind, Sid, was the support that the Singapore government gives. Right, I think companies from India or the US don't understand the magnitude of support that you can get in Singapore. Whether it's Enterprise SG, whether it's IMDA, whether it's EDB or EDBI, Temasek, GIC, just that whole consortium of companies, the government linked venture labs and accelerators that are there that can get you deal flows.
If you're in the right sector.
If you're in the right sector.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I think from my CEO was down here last year, and when we had a meeting with IMDA, once they understand the relevance of IMDA and Enterprise SG, and because they call for literally due diligence, you have to open up your financials and books, and you need that to be communicated directly with the CEO for them to say that, okay, this makes sense. I mean, I want to put my muscle behind IMD or Enterprise SG, because if we open up our books to them and they feel happy with us, then we are going to get X amount of pipeline, Y amount of business.
Mm-hmm. And okay, so I think we spoke about this the last time we caught up. Was having like a champion in the HQ, kind of, I wouldn't say fight your battles, but I guess help push things in the right direction. How have you done that successfully, and I guess what have the effects been for you?
I think this has been a key strategy for me, and I think I've been lucky enough, and I think most of us these days are lucky enough to work in businesses that are pretty diverse. And we have people all over the world that are sitting in places where Western companies are typically headquartered, like Silicon Valley or New York or London, are very diverse cities. So I've not been ashamed of taking advantage of that at all. I will reach out to people like Sushant, our CTO, and ask him to advocate for things that we need to support our Indian business. He understands that business and how business gets done there. Another example that's like not as obvious as the CTO is we were working on some localization efforts for Indonesia, and I found a Indonesian engineer that just works on a product at Asana sitting in California, and sort of enrolled her as our on-the-ground advocate when we were talking about spending and investing in translating things to Bahasa Indonesian. She was there supporting us and explaining to people like who the big players are in the market and why they're important and how business gets done there. And it's not her responsibility, or Prashant, our CTO even, to carry that torch for us, but they can definitely like put some wind in our sails.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a big believer of building your own mafia in whichever company you join, right? So I think sometimes you're kind of lucky that you bump into ex-colleagues. So in some of my companies, I've worked with people that I've worked before, so they have helped in bridging those gaps. But yeah, I totally agree with Andrew in terms of like finding a champion in the HQ, right? And I think we should take advantage of all the headquarter events, right? So whether it's sales kickoff or similar kind of events, right? We should try to like purposely go there and build those kind of champions and alliances, because they definitely, and not just in sales, right? Not just because we are in the sales org, but in product tech, some of the other organizations also.
I look for people that, I know this is kind of silly, but I'll look for people that are just going on holiday. Like if somebody's coming out to Bali, I'm going to ping them and say like, stop over in Singapore, or hey, let's meet up in Jakarta. And there's also like, you definitely will not find a shortage of product people that want to go on a company trip to like Korea or Tokyo or something like that.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think for a lot of the companies from the US or even India, right, when they're heading out, it's a lot of learning for them also, a lot of exposure to different cultures they've not been ever, been introduced to earlier. So there is a personal win and a professional win to make sure that APAC succeeds, right? I mean, one of the 3 tenets my CEO has is to make sure that international growth is successful, because that's in his mind, that's his KPI, apart from a few other things on profitability and everything else. But international success is super critical. So once the people in the company align to that, then what do you need, man? We'll make it happen, right?
Fantastic. So I think that the next critical part about building a business in APAC is about literally building the teams, hiring. So I guess what would be some of the challenges that you faced, and I guess the hiring philosophy you have to overcome those challenges and make the right hires? Andrew, would you like to go first?
Sure. I don't feel like it's anything like too revolutionary, but we try to hold a really high bar, and we hire people that are have demonstrated expertise in their field, but also we're very open to looking at people and different profiles that maybe wouldn't traditionally fit into what you would first think of as someone in a particular role. So we try to hire teams from a very diverse background. I know that a lot of people struggle to hire, especially in smaller markets like Singapore. And I think it does take time and investment to hire the right people. But I also think it's unfair to categorize or characterize Singapore as having some kind of lack of talent, because I really don't think that's true. I think there's a lot of very ambitious and very capable people here that you can tap into for different things. So I don't think it's like super groundbreaking or revolutionary, but we look for really great people from diverse backgrounds, and we look for them here in Singapore.
I think definitely recruiters are important in certain markets. So if you think about Japan, you need a senior hires, you need a recruiter, right? You need someone who can actually get you the right set of people, and then you can kind of manage with that. Most of the other markets you can go by word of mouth or some connections. The other thing that I've seen is, and I've learned the hard way, is back channeling. Just making sure that you've got enough information on references done from this person, not from the references they give you, but from other connections that you can somehow get in front of, right? Because that just reveals so much. Because there are enough and more very capable people, Andrew, to your point, who just somehow are not able to deliver for some reason, right? And it's important to back channel that information to find out, is there more to just the talk.
Yeah. On the recruiter point too, I think the analogy I think of is if you were to go do enterprise sales in a country like Japan or in Korea, you wouldn't just like put a price up on your website and hope that it happens. You have to have those relationships. Yeah. It's the same with hiring and those leadership roles. Like you have to have someone on the ground who has those relationships.
Exactly.
Yeah, I think with the hiring, I would mention a couple of points on how to go like deep into hiring the right profile, right? So generally in these kind of go-to-market region roles, you have a large team, right? So your marketing, customer success, inside sales reps, all of them kind of reporting to you. But ultimately, I think the two profiles which really matter is the hunter, the people who go after new business, and the people who are managing and expanding the existing accounts, right? So let's call them customer success account management role. So what I've seen, again, in the context of the kind of company that I have worked with, 50 to 100, 200 employee companies, 0 to 1 or 1 to 10 kind of, the ARR range. For hunter role, I typically go for the scrappy ones, who are people who have worked in a similar company before, right? Not from the big ones, no disrespect to like Salesforce and IBM and Microsoft and so on and so forth. But, people who have not really worked in a lot of structure, right? They're just scrappy, they know how to navigate new accounts and, even without any relationships and so on and so forth. So that's on the hunter side. On the customer success side, I go the other way. So I hire people from really, well-established companies like Salesforce and AWS and all, because they can bring a lot of method to the madness, right? They can bring a lot of structure to the chaos. Because when you're serving large enterprises, that's what you need, right? You want someone who can bring structure and manage different stakeholders properly. Whereas on the hunter side, you don't need that kind of structure. You want someone who can navigate, talk to like 10 different stakeholders, line them up and close the deal, right? So very two extreme, kind of profiles.
That's an excellent point, actually. I never thought of it that way.
I think I'm going to take that away. Yeah. I'm like, in the back of my mind, I'm like, oh, that's good. I like that. Really
I think the other big thing, and this goes back to expectation setting as well, right? One of the things that when, the Pindrop CEO was down here with his technical advisor, and they were kind of scouting around the market, and when we were having a chat, and he says, hey, what do you need to make this region successful? By then I'd had enough interactions with this technical advisor, and I was like, relocate him to Singapore and we'll make this a success, right? And with all the things fell in place, and he's actually relocated, so it's worked out well for us, because Tim Pruger he's just a beast, and it's amazing having him here, because we're able to kind of work and complement each other. in terms of market, how we're going to market and how we're managing the technical side. Most importantly, someone like that brings connections to HQ, to the headquarters, to the engineering team, to the product team. And this maybe has nothing to do with the US based companies. Even when I was in YMO, I was fortunate enough to have somebody from India relocate to Singapore, like the pre-sales who had been there 5 years. Ashish, phenomenal guy, and he had all these connects back as well. So that I think is a winning combination, especially if you're the first two boots on the ground.
Yeah, there's something magical about, like, even as a GM, you can ask for all these resources and all these things you need from headquarters and bang the drum. But yeah, when you have that one person that they've worked there for a while, maybe they have a relationship. They can just like one Slack message and suddenly it's magic. It just gets done. It's like, oh, I understand what you're saying.
Yeah.
I've been saying this all the time.
I mean, this guy just literally goes like, hey, we really need this. Yeah, no problem. I mean, it's done by tomorrow, right? Like, how did you do it? Don't want to ask you.
Like, I've been asking for this forever. Yeah, no, it's just relationships. Yeah, it helps a lot.
Yeah, I think what you mentioned is true. It's like it's really important to have a really good pre-sales technical guy who can help you sell. I guess what's been the most interesting success story about you having that technical genius in place that actually helped you close like a significant deal? Anyone have any stories to share? That?
Yeah, I think for us it's a little. I mean, some of our sales are very technical, but the value that our solutions engineers here add is they add this translation layer between what is the value proposition of a piece of software in the context of a Silicon Valley company, which is often, there's like a lot of platitudes and big change the world type of mission, which is great and it gives us all a North Star. But what a lot of our clients here need is like practicality and use cases. So it's acting as that translation layer, which can get quite technical of like, well, what does it actually do for my business? Like how does it move the needle for me? How does it make my people more productive or save me money? And I think that, at least in my experience, the team here has played a really key role in big enterprise accounts in places like Indonesia and Vietnam and Thailand.
Yeah, I think, I mean, my experience, and I have not actually seen that many people with that profile, is those kind of pre-sales people who can really articulate technology in a very, very simple speak, who can talk to the CMO, explain them the technology without even talking about the technology at all, right? Down to the engineer level, where they can go really like hardcore on the technical details and all. I have met like maybe one or two people in my entire career. Very, very extremely hard to find.
Completely agree. And you get lucky, if you find such guys, because to your point, right? If you're able to go from business value to a customer, to impact that they can deliver, down to, hey, this SQL's query has an issue with it. Yeah. That's phenomenal range, right? The other thing is the ability to, sometimes in a lot of markets like Japan, they will like function test the hell out of your product, right? And help you believe that you need a separate version for Japan that actually works, unlike the ones that you've been selling all this while. And there it helps to have somebody who's from the company who sees, man, they're being serious. They genuinely need to test all these things. So I got to push my engineers and product and folks to make it better. Similarly, technical queries, right? I mentioned about IMD and a few others now. So the conversations we've had with them, if it was me or some other pre-sales guy asking headquarters for documentation, it just won't cut it. But you have this guy who understands why are they asking for this and what exactly can I get so it helps fulfill that gap, right? And that's really, it's very difficult to find.
Yeah, very difficult.
Yeah.
Actually, I take it back. Not even two. I've only met one such person.
Right. So I have one interesting question. I think it's a bit of a just popped into my head.
Yeah.
What is one mistake that you made in the last year, and one success that you've had in the last year that you would carry into the future? Let me rephrase that. What is one mistake that you made that has changed the way you look at how you manage your teams?
Well, not in the last 1 year, but I can just say, one mistake that I've learned, the hard way is that not letting go of people soon enough, right? So I mean, there are situations where you know that the person is just, the skill isn't there, or is not putting in the effort and so on. But sometimes we tend to like keep those people in just because, the person has been in the company for a while, or, you're just like a soft person yourself, right? I think not letting go of people soon enough is one of my biggest mistakes, I would say.
Yeah, I think the thing, like, we've just wrapped up our planning for this fiscal year, and so we're kicking off a new fiscal, and very excited about that. In that process, you look back at the previous year, and for me personally, I think that the mistake that I have made with my team is really trying to do too much with too little. I hate saying no to like opportunity in the business, even if it's completely outside of my purview. And I probably, when I take things on, that obviously has a downstream impact on the team. And I just need to do a better job this year at prioritizing the places where we can focus and have the biggest impact as a team. And I think we will do that. And I think I openly talked to my team about like where we've had some of those missteps and what are some of the things that we should reprioritize. I think they're bought into that. But at the same time, looking forward, I'm so excited and optimistic because of those same people. Like that's the thing that I got right, was the people that we hired. And you don't get it right every single time, but the team that we have in place now is honestly incredible.
I think from my perspective, mistake, yeah, so again, it depends on the stage of your life. So I felt post 40, because I've been a core tech and fintech, insurtech guy, and then I made this move to a prop tech company for a while. It was great going. I mean, we were doing really well, but I realized it's not my strength. So I'm a huge advocate now of, if you're 40 plus, maybe just double down on your strengths and just try and make that happen. And I kind of worked with the teams also on that. So if it's you're young, you're going after the experience and the range, great, but after some time consolidate. And I think something that I would continue to repeat is, apart from, you have to make sure is the person the right fit for the organization, but it's also not hiring too fast. You got to make sure that there's enough for them to do. When all the times the number of companies have been first boots on the ground, new business, I take the hit because there's literally nothing, right? You're doing 0 to 1. But I have to ensure that the next guy who comes in, there's enough for them to work on, enough for them to be successful. And for that, product market fit, making sure you're going after the right people in different markets, all that, ironing that out, and then doing the hiring, right? I think that's something I've learned along the way, and that's a very good practice that I stick to even now. So I'm never in a hurry to hire people. I'm like, let's prove it out. I'll do all the work that's required till then. Maybe get my partner in crime, but pre-sales. But you got to prove it out before you hire.
Yeah,
I agree. You have to like feed the machine. Like if headquarters says, "Oh, we're going to expand to APAC," the next question is like, "Okay, what are we going to do? Like, where are we going to feed it? Do you have leads somewhere? Do you have like some a foot in the door? Do you have something?" And it's the same as you expand. Every time you got to keep feeding them.
And Andrew, on that point, there have been cases in the past where, especially, and this is for all the listeners, right? If you've raised money, investors and board will say, "All right, we need to add 2 headcounts a month. We got to get this machine going." But you're like, hang on, there's no product market fit yet. Get what machine going? Where if I hire a guy, I'm setting them up for failure. There's no point.
And if they found the fit in the US or in Europe, but that doesn't mean that they found the fit in APAC.
Yeah.
Brilliant. Anyway, that's all the time we have for today, and I really appreciate all of you sharing your thoughts and insights. Yeah, I think the time flew by quite quickly. We didn't realize it. I think it's more than, it's been quite a good one. And yeah, really enjoyed the conversation. I hope you guys did too, and I think our listeners definitely did. So, stay tuned for more, and we'll see you on the next one.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.